I'm very, very happy to be here with you guys, even though I'm sitting in a cafe because my internet at home is very scatty and I couldn't bring myself to take a chance that we would go in and out like I've been going in and out all morning. So, can you see my screen? Okay. Um, I call this why I disseminate or know your baby can't read. And we'll talk about that. I'm at the University of Delaware, and if you have any questions that arise, I have the simplest email in America, Roberta at udel, UDEL dot edu. Okay, so let's see if we can make these slides change. Okay, today everybody seems to be talking about development and education. I think I have heard the words AI 3,000 times in the last week. We talk about childcare, poor physical health for kids, high quality preschool, rising child poverty, and increased mental health issues. COVID did not do us a solid, but many of us are wary when we hear what is being said in the world about these issues. Consider your baby can read. Did you ever think about this or hear about this? I have asked my class what they think. Can an 18-month-old be taught to read? Um, some of them say yes, and that surprises me. Now, we're going to talk more about this, but not right now. I'm having a little difficulty changing. Okay. Fundamentally, this is hooey. You'll hear more about it later. So, what do we do? When I ask academics how they share their science, many say they publish papers. But there's a problem with that. Like 17 people read our scientific papers. So it's a very limited form of dissemination. Most journals and books are locked up without public access at universities. And then there are a lot of worries about when do we know enough to disseminate? And I don't want to minimize these concerns, but we know quite a lot now that we could be sharing. And when the press calls, these people run in the opposite direction. Now, more junior people coming up at a different time, I find, want to bring out their science. They seem quite devoted to the idea. And I sure hope today helps to share the wealth because we know tons about what's good for kids.
Roberta, I just want to say, we can't see if your slides are advancing or not.
Oh, that's horrible.
We're still on the
come out
first
of
one.
this. I'm still on the first one and I have moved on.
Okay.
You were very kind to tell me that. Okay, so you know what say what?
You can put them on slideshow. You could.
I did. It didn't work. So I'm just going to do it this way. And what this way means is using the slides as they appear. And I won't have things that fly in, but such is life. Okay, so these are the topics I talked about. Many of us are wary. This is Your Baby Can Read, which is fundamentally hooey. We'll talk about this more later. And this is what I just said about sharing the wealth and that many of the older generation, although not all, are reluctant to share. And we need to create edible science. Please steal this. Edible science that is accessible, digestible, and usable through the dissemination of information, through the dissemination of experiences, which is a new form of dissemination. And I'm hoping what new ways you can come up with and share with us about how to share the science. The roadmap for today is I'll talk a little bit about the theoretical framework we adapted. I'll talk about how we translate complex research with clear and compelling messages, I hope, and how we create new coalitions, which also helps us disseminate. I'll talk about how we critique the marketplace, which is determined to sell things that are not necessarily good for kids. And I'll talk about how we expand the reach and influence of our scholarship by going into schools. So our theoretical framework is quite simple. It's more a framework than a theory, but it's what do children need for optimal human development and a great education. We talk about the who. We have to take into consideration who they are, their community values and culture. It's not a one-size-fits-all world. And we have to think about the how, the science of how kids learn, which we'll talk about more, but we have not been doing this. We have been doing things that do not teach in the way that children's brains work best. And if we have a learning goal and have playful learning, we meet the requirements of the how. And we talk about the what, the science of what kids should learn. We talk about the 6 C's. And in our book, Becoming Brilliant, we lay these out in detail, the literature behind them. We talk about communication, collaboration, content, which includes all the stuff that we teach in school and should include even more, because when things get tough, it's only math and reading that people emphasize, which is a shame. We talk about critical thinking, creative innovation, and confidence, or grit. Kids need these things. We are going to be replaced in many cases by AI, and we need our kids to learn the skills that AI does not easily acquire so that they continue to have jobs. This is our 3-part equation for active playful learning. Now, when translating research, you have to think where are the kids found. So we recognize that kids spend only 20% of their time in school. It's a shocking number if you think about it. So that means the rest is at home or in their neighborhoods. I don't care what kind of neighborhood they live in. We wanted to impact kids in all the places they go and not make them always come to us in our labs or in children's museums, some of which it turns out are expensive to get into, and it's a shame because children's museums are so fabulous. So we need them to have more free days, and we need more benefactors. So from the home to the school to the neighborhood to the broader community, we want to align our efforts to enrich children's lives by including all the contexts in which they live. But how do we do that? It's a very daunting task. I want to talk about now sharing the science by disseminating experiences. I've been doing this for a long time, and some of what I'm going to describe is going to seem daunting. You're going to go, oh my God, you'll be right to do that, because these kinds of things are extremely time consuming, and it takes a while to build up the kinds of cred that allows you to work with municipalities to get things going. The idea we had for learning landscapes was to marry the learning sciences with architectural design in public spaces in ways that create playful learning opportunities for children and families, and to naturally increase the quality of caregiver-child, we're interested in 3-generation interaction in ways that spark cognitive and social development through play, because that's how kids learn best. My first example is the Ultimate Block Party, which took place in Central Park, gorgeous, pristine Central Park in the center of New York City, that we turned into a mob scene. We had many more people than we expected to have. The Parks Department told us we're lucky if we had 3,000 or 4,000 people. We had about 50,000 people at the event. You can read more about it in our publication. The results, when we did a survey, was that we increased parents' attitudes toward the play and learning connection. which is a vital component for public awareness. When you hear people say, oh, they're just playing, you have to stop them. You have to say, no, they're not just playing. Play is how children learn, and it's really important for kids to engage in. Second example, oh, I should say a little more about the Ultimate Block Party. We had 28 science-based activities that people could go to. Everything was free. We made a handbook called the playbook that we handed out to everybody and told them, don't throw it out. It has all kinds of information about additional activities and things you can do. We did this on a shoestring. I had burnout in the summer before this occurred. It was a giant venture. And you can do a smaller version of an ultimate block party in your community. You have to bring the community together, which is one of the wonderful benefits. We brought together organizations that didn't even know the other existed. They had the same mission. So this has some wonderful spin-offs. The second, for example, we've done in supermarkets. We asked the question, can the introduction of signs in a supermarket increase caregiver-child language interactions? Now, for those of you who you're all developmental, you know that language is crucial for school readiness and for success in school and for children understanding their social emotional relationships and being able to engage in self-regulation. So we asked whether the introduction of signs in a supermarket, somebody has their mute on, not on, okay, thank you. The introduction of signs in a supermarket could increase caregiver-child language interactions. These are examples of the signs. We also did this in South Africa. The signs were either up or down. They said simple things like, do you know milk comes from cows? And we put them in middle and low income supermarkets. You, please, I don't know who that is. Eudice Debo, please turn off your sound. Thank you. When you take your kid to a supermarket, you talk to your kid constantly. You're always saying, oh, look at the eggplant, it's purple, blah, blah, blah. People who are under tremendous stress, who come from low income backgrounds, often don't talk to their kids. But we found when the signs were up, 33% increase in caregiver-child language. In middle-class communities, it didn't change because we talk to our kids all the time. The third example is Urban Thinkscape, which transformed a bus stop into a playful learning space in New York City. I'm sorry, in Philadelphia. New York City was the ultimate block party. This is in Philly. There were a number of activities in this space that kids could do, and they centered around spatial learning, language narrative, and executive function, but there actually were more than 3. There were many more. And it used to be the case that it was a bus stop with a bench. Now, when a parent sits at a bench at a bus stop, what does a parent do? Right? And the kid is walking around. We could make bus stops a fun learning location, which is what we showed with Urban Thinkscape. We found when we studied it that parent-child interaction compared to a control playground in the same neighborhood increased. That adult and child language use increased, and that the spatial and numeric language we targeted went from 2% to 36% in this location. And the fourth is Parkopolis, which is a human-sized board game. It's amazing. It was at the Please Touch Museum in Philadelphia. I am hoping it will eventually open up in the Delaware Children's Museum. They have it now. It, in particular, worked on early mathematical skills and scientific reasoning. We wanted to see if it had an impact. We always study these installations, and we compared it to a rocket building activity at the same museum. To our surprise, parent-child interaction definitely increased compared to what was going on in the rocket exhibition. Adult and child language use and question use went up. The targeted spatial numeric language and fraction language went up, and physical activity increased here because they had to go around the board. Another thing that you want to do if you want to create opportunities to translate research for the public is to form new coalitions. We need to break down the silos that we reside in and bring together the fields that impact children's development and education. So we started out by thinking learning scientists, people in the world of entertainment who really have an opportunity to influence the public, as do people in journalism and policy. And we added different fields depending upon the particular year that we did this. This was the Learning Sciences Exchange, funded by the Jacobs Foundation and last time by the Grable Foundation. It's a joint project to share the science of learning with the public, and also the people who came from these different fields shared their secrets in a way, because they realized they were talking past each other sometimes. Like, you use the word process, but for somebody in journalism or somebody in the entertainment world, it means something different. So at the beginning, it was a little difficult for them to talk to each other, but it worked out great. We set up 3 groups of 5 people that came from 5 different areas, and they created products, which you can see if you go on the New America website. We invited mid-career applicants to decide what problem they wanted to solve in the developmental or educational sphere as they look through their different lenses. So notice that I have a picture of these glasses here. We thought about a great metaphor for where these people were coming from as wearing different colored glasses. And you can see at the LSX Summit, I'm there with Kathy Hirsch-Pasek and Lisa Guernsey were the main organizers, and there's Greg Baer from the Grable Foundation. And we were wearing the glasses that corresponded to the fields that we are in. Sample projects, again, on the New America website. They're great. Something like kindergrams that allowed kids to talk to people all around the world. Liz Gunderson happened to be the learning scientist in a group that created math games. And Megan McClelland and her group created Bunny to Bunny, a book about forming attachments in infancy. I love this stuff. Okay. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about how we critique the marketplace. I just read in the New York Times, oh my God, on the front page that skincare regimens are being offered for preschoolers and 5-year-olds. Skincare, the feel of the skin of a preschooler or a 5-year-old, it's like velvet. All they need is soap and water, but the marketplace saw an opening. And they are offering this junk to kids. And I just listened to a podcast. Some of this stuff has fragrances in it, which has chemicals that children should not be exposed to in it. So I took them on in LinkedIn and wrote about it. And Kathy Hirsch-Pasek and I, she is my long-term collaborator, we kid about it and say we're like husband and wife, you know, but now 2 wives. Dr. Kathy and Dr. Rowe is our Instagram handle. And I made a clip about this. Please follow us. This is one of the ways that we're trying to get the word out. For example, about selling skincare stuff to preschoolers. Also on the front page was an article about how parents are spending $8,000 to hire coaches to help their kids get off media. Why kids are allowed to stay on media for endless hours and why parents feel like they can't get them off is a very serious problem in our society. And I made a clip about that too with Dr. Kathy and Dr. Lowe. Just amazing to me. Consider your baby can read. What's the real skinny on this? If I could see you, I would ask for a show of hands about how many of you actually had heard of this. Some of us were called by the Today Show, and what did the experts say? Quote, misleading and not true, just memorization. Harmful because it encourages babies to watch screens for too long. And the brain's not developed enough to actually learn to read at that age. The general expert consensus was this is false. You want your kid to read? The experts said this, and we say this. You talk with them, you have conversations, you read with them to help them develop the language skills that underlie reading and to help them become acquainted with print and how books work. A lot of kids come to school and don't know that. Now, there was no explicit test of your baby can read until, God bless her, Susan Newman at NYU took it on. Notice that she published in the Journal of Educational Psychology, and I don't know if she went to Popular Science. More likely they picked up on it and came to her. So she had babies 18 months, 10 to 18 months when it was supposed to work, and gave the Your Baby Can Read system to them for over 7 months and half a control. In 13 of 14 assessments, things like ability to recognize letter names, letter sounds, vocabulary, no difference between the groups. So what a surprise. The implicit message here is that you can take on the marketplace through your research, but then go a bit further and share the information in a more popular venue. Bottom line, no, your baby can't read. But don't worry, they stopped offering your baby can read, and now they have your child can read. So you could still buy this junk. How do we do that? Another way to take on the marketplace. Selling educational apps is a billion-dollar business. No, I have quotes around educational. What about those so-called educational apps? Can't be that many, right? Only 500,000 and growing every day. Who vets and decides if we can take off the quotation marks? Well, Common Sense Media is great, but nobody can keep up with the flow of apps. So we wrote a paper to try to generate a set of principles to help parents, kids, and developers. And we even wrote a paper for developers so that developmental scientists and developers don't talk past each other. And we published this in Psychological Science and the Public Interest, and it suggested after our development of these principles that many of these apps were likely to have little educational value. But how do we really know that? Well, Jenny Radesky, who's a media maven, and her student Marissa Meyer asked the key question: how educational are educational apps for young children? And they developed a rating scheme based on the 4 pillars that we suggested for how learning takes place best with apps. You have a learning goal, and then you want the kid to be active, not passive, not just minds on swiping. You want the kid to be engaged and not distracted. And some of the early generation apps were terrible about that. They would interrupt stories and narratives to say, Oh, Clifford starts with the letter C. Not good. You want it to be meaningful to kids, to link up to things in their own lives. And you want them to be socially interactive because there's tons of research that tells us kids learn best when they work with others. Humans are the key. And humans are just the things we're getting rid of with this AI coming on board. So they rated 124 most downloaded apps. I don't think you can be surprised. The overall scores were low across the 4 original pillars, and the vast majority of apps earned scores of 1 out of 3. That means the apps were passive, distracting, not meaningful, not socially interactive. This is supposed to be educational? No. We also expanded the reach and influence of our scholarship with our active playful learning framework that talks about, from a school perspective, joyful teaching and deeper learning. We received a very large grant from the Lego Foundation, and we are in 5 states now, working in different school districts in California, Illinois, Virginia, Texas, and Oregon just joined us. And in each school district, we enroll a different number of schools with 3 coaches. So it's a coach the coaching model. So our expert coaches coach the teachers, and we collect data about school assessments, coach feedback, observations, and we're just at the beginning here. So I can't tell you much about results, but what we're after is changing these 6 behaviors rooted in the science for how children learn best. And that's our wheel of how children learn. We are focusing on helping teachers break down the whole class thing they do and work in small and paired groups where they can have more interaction with kids. We're working on helping teachers recognize and increase students' contributions to interactions. There's so much research that shows that kids hardly talk in school, that the teacher is mostly the sage on the stage at the front. We wanted to increase the amount of hands-on and minds-on exploration, discovery, inquiry, give students choice and voice on how they want to learn, help students connect their learning to other experiences. This is the meaningful part in and out of school, and infuse enthusiasm and positivity into their learning experiences. Why shouldn't learning be joyful? It doesn't have to be dull and boring. If you play more of a role, it is fun. So we use a coach-based model. We did this with a pilot group of 42 teachers and began to see how schools could change and teachers and students could be more engaged and happier. Stay tuned for the findings, but you can read about the project if you go on the Brookings Institute website in a paper that reports the very first results, written by Kim Nesbitt, and in numerous blogs that appear on the Brookings Institute by Kathy Hirsch-Pasek and her colleagues like me. In Einstein Never Used Flashcards, our book directed to parents and practitioners, we go into homes. Now, this received the Books for a Better Life Award in its first edition in 2003. This is the closest to the Oscars I will ever come. It was in a hotel in New York, and it had personalities we have heard of. It was really fun. We never expected to win. We were just thrilled to have the nomination. So the publisher got in touch with us to ask if we would be interested in doing a revision for a re-release. And of course we were, because the first edition occurred before the birth of the iPhone. The iPhone was born in 2007. This has turned our lives upside down. So here is our totally revised second edition. And I put down here the link if you're interested in ordering it. It will be out in January. I have this red line across my screen. Does anybody else have it? I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
So
Roberta, we can see it, but it's fine.
I know, I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
So here's where we went today. We talked about our theoretical framework. We talked about how we can translate complex messages, how we can create new coalitions, how we can critique the marketplace, and how we can expand the reach and influence of our scholarship, maybe by going to school. You, not we, you are so needed to counteract fake scientific news, like giving kids face creams. Anybody? I can't see you, so I can't know. This was Walter Cronkite. He was in everyone's homes. He was a newscaster. We don't have trusted sources like this anymore. So we need you and me to bring out the real science to improve children's and families' lives and speak out against the fake science. There's a lot of it. If we don't, you know who's going to take over. They're there already, the marketplace, selling us stuff that isn't great for kids. Now we need to invent new ways to disseminate, not just with lectures, not even with books, although we've written a bunch of them, but a lot of people don't read that much anymore. So we have to think about what new ways we can offer, like experiences, and we need to hear your ideas. We really hope you're going to take this dissemination challenge with us. Remember, your baby can't read, and no one knows this if we don't speak out. But we can tell the public what does matter for learning to read, things like having conversational duets and reading to children in a dialogic way where you encourage their questions and you follow their little pointing finger to talk about what they are interested in. You make the book come alive. That's what matters. So thanks to everybody who's participated in our research and the many organizations that have supported our research. And of course, my longstanding collaborator, Kathy Hirsch-Pasek of Temple University. I guess I'll just leave it on this slide. And I don't know how we're handling questions, but I'm officially done. So if you have questions, comments, you can't throw tomatoes. They won't go through the screen. Julie?
Yeah, that was so terrific, Roberta. You're such an expert in so many different domains, but including the dissemination domain, and so I think I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody. It's such a privilege to hear you speak about this. There is a chat box. Oh gosh, no, that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to. I learned a lot from you. Yeah. I think there was one question going back to the supermarket study that you described. And I wondered this as well. And then other people can add additional questions. But how did you measure language quantity and maybe even sort of more generally, when you do this kind of research in these large settings, how are you collecting your data?
So for the the one where we transformed the bus stop, the parking lot, we hired people from the community to survey how people felt about it and what they thought about it. And we also had people from the community look at the control group when we did the ultimate block party. We compared that to also a playground in the area. So we love the idea of working with the community and having the community play a role in the collection of the data. In the supermarket, we didn't approach people, so we don't know the details of what they said. We would have had to mic them up, and we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to see, and so in other words, there's tons more work to be done. We just wanted to see if there would be more conversation that had a more positive valence than sometimes what you see in supermarkets, which is negative. Um, so we had somebody wearing, the white coat that the people in the supermarkets wear, like a doctor's coat. And we had them with their clipboards, kind of overhearing. This went through human subjects. We never approached anybody. We never identified anybody to see the nature of the conversations that were occurring and the valence of the conversations. We don't even know if some of the people who were with the kids were parents. They might have been grandparents. They might have been hired caregivers. We estimated children's age, literally, because we didn't want to approach anybody. So if you think about it, every project has its own requirements and you do the best you can. I think when we first tried to publish this stuff, we did get a little gas, because it's not your typical laboratory research. But then again, where are you going to go in dissemination if all you do is stay in your laboratory? So hopefully we've loosened up the criteria a little bit for what can count as a scientific study.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's just this is so creative, and I've been doing my own research for a little while now, and I am just blown away. I think these are such important methods, and I especially like incorporating people in the community to help collect the data. Like that's just, I imagine you train them a little bit
and pay
give them
them
some.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also to help design any installations. There's a lot happening in Santa Ana, California now in that way, where the community is working with Kathy Hirsch-Pasek and Andres Bustamante, and they're asking for more playful learning landscapes installations. They can't get enough of them. And they weigh in on it as well, which ones they want and where.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know you have to leave, so let me go through a couple of these other questions. So Barbara Rogoff's here, and she asks, what's your advice for making the industry, or what's your advice for making the information accessible to the public?
The information sounds like she is referring to some specific type of information. It depends on what you have. Like Kathy and I are now doing many podcasts with others because our book is coming out in a month. Einstein never used flashcards. So that's one way we're getting out. And Instagram does not come naturally to me.
Right.
But I'm learning how to put out messages about the research to the public in like 30-second clips. So please check us out at Dr. Kathy with a K and Dr. Rowe, no punctuation. So you can see how we're kind of making a fool of ourselves, but really trying to get the word out to real people.
Great. Yeah. And the next question is, what is your experience with pushback from industry and how do you navigate it?
We really haven't had a problem.
Okay.
Now, maybe in future, if we're outspoken about certain products, the stuff that we're really very concerned about at the moment is AI. I'm sure everybody heard about the chatbot named Kemma that told kids how to find matches and light them, how to find knives, and about sexual kinks.
I know.
And then when the company wrote about it, they said they were temporarily suspending sales. Temporarily, I'd burn it. But this is oh my God, a very serious concern. And maybe as we become more vocal, AI companies will come back at us. I don't know, but like I read a paper with my class just this morning in lab about how background TV is so bad for kids because it reduces the amount of parent-child conversation that takes place by a lot.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, where are we? We've reduced conversation with background TV. Something like 63% of middle class kids have their own tablet. So they're playing, the TV is on, they're playing on the tablet. There's no room for the mother or the father or the caregiver to have a conversation with the kid. Where's the kid going to learn morals from? Where's the kid going to learn right and wrong from? I mean, let alone language is being disadvantaged. Who's going to talk to them? So much of what we know comes from these informal conversations we have with our kids. So this is really a concern to me.
Yeah, for sure. Another question is, any idea on how to disseminate within the formal learning space without partnering with a for-profit publisher? So sort of like alternative ideas. So like if you're maybe earlier in your career and you're not able to partner with a publisher, like what are some tips that you think like, early career scholars can would benefit from?
Everybody can write blogs. And there are a variety of places that take them. A list. Everybody can write an op-ed like for local newspaper. Everybody can create some kind of an account on Facebook or Instagram or something. There's a lot of really interesting stuff on LinkedIn where people offer things to read and ideas. And so, I can't say I'm not a fan of social media anymore because I find myself on it. But that's one way. Offering to speak. Now, sometimes people are reluctant to do that. But if you have a kid at school and you know about a topic that you've done research on, and parents would love to hear the stuff that you found, you could offer to speak for 15 minutes. That's the way you get your feet wet to a PTA. You could start a newsletter if you have your own lab in which you put in the latest findings. I have a list of subjects that we've had come to the lab for years, and I make a newsletter that includes, like once a year, that includes the latest findings. This time I'm going to put in Children and Screens made up a terrific booklet about screens and their disadvantages. I'm going to attach that, and I'll tell them about my book, and I'll tell them about this finding about TV. It's not that hard to find ways to communicate once you start to think about who do I want to get to. And if you have kids and your kids are in school, if you're in a church, if you're in a synagogue, I've spoken at my synagogue, you could think about things you could do like that. And people would love to hear this stuff. People with kids are hungry for information, and they're getting so many things at cross purposes. But you guys who are on this call are the experts. You're not the marketplace. You're not some lady who decided to have a blog. You know stuff about what's good for kids. You can do it.
Right. Yeah, no, that's all really, really good advice. There are two sort of related questions about, sort of communicating with teachers, or other professionals. And so the example provided was speech language pathologists. And like, I don't know if you have advice about, sort of like how to communicate. I've had some experiences communicating with teachers where sometimes I feel like, they feel like they have all of this experience, in the classroom. Yeah. I'm not in the classroom. And so, sort of like, how do you kind of make that connection and communicate with people like that?
The key is they're experts and you're an expert.
Yep.
If you don't grant them their expertise, then you're talking from here to here, top down. You don't want to do that. Speech language pathologists, the same thing. I learned so much when I speak to either of these groups. And I'm very, very passionate about language development and helping parents do what's right for their kids. Anybody who's on this phone call who wanted to learn about dissemination is passionate about something and also has the capability to recognize that the people to whom they wish to speak have expertise. And you want to draw them out and get their questions and get their comments because you'll learn from them too. It's a two-way street.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Those are all the questions that are in the chat box. Does anybody want to ask Roberta any more questions? I know she has to leave soon because she has 2 podcasts. So she is a dissemination expert who's living it today, probably most days. But I think we have time for maybe one more question if anyone has one.
Make it a short one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It doesn't look like there is. Roberta, maybe you could just sort of end with like maybe sharing like one of your most favorite, like dissemination experience moments. Like, was there something that like sort of, like you feel particularly proud about or, surprised you or that you really enjoyed?
I would have to say in 2010, October 2nd, the ultimate block party. Kathy and I were walking around in the midst of this humanity and wearing our doctor coats and our pins that said play doctor. And we were blown away. We never, ever imagined that we would generate the kinds of interest that we got. And people would say, are you going to do this next year? Are you going to do this next year? We sold nothing at this thing. We made no money at this thing. There's no way we could do it again because it nearly killed us. But that was New York City. There have been others in Baltimore and Connecticut, even in Canada. And you don't have to do it quite like we did. So there are ways to do this.
Yeah. That's amazing. And for those of who are interested in learning more about that, you had your the citation for the publication that came from that, right? So thank you so much. Oh my goodness.
Oh, thank you, Julie. And thank you,
this has been such a pleasure. And thank you everybody for chiming in today. You're all registered. And so Patrick will send a recording of the webinar out, and then he also will send the slides. And so I am so pleased to see everybody here today. And, there will definitely be notifications about the next webinar, which will be in the new year. So thank you again, Roberta.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Have a great holiday all.